Welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes, that you find some inspiration along the way. We are at the very end of June, year 2023, and I am coming to you from a hot, sunny day in Minnesota where I live with my husband and our two young children. We are full on into summer break. It has been a couple of weeks now. It has been a busy summer so far. I feel like it's a different kind of busy from the school year. Our children just finished up 1st and 4th grade, and yeah, we just have a bunch of things going on, and it's all good busy. It's all good things. And I'm the primary driver, and so, for our children's activities. And it just means a lot of go, 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 and we do have downtime. I do feel like that's very important to have downtime. But yeah, there's lots of good things going on here, and it has been a hot start to summer. We have had above average temperatures. The air quality has not been the greatest from the wildfires, all that smoke blowing in from the wildfires in Canada, and so we've had some very hazy days where you can literally smell the smoke outside, and our eyes have been tearing up at some points, and you can feel it in your throat. It's just not very pleasant. Yeah, so on those days, we try to stay inside as much as possible. There hasn't been a ton of outside stuff. Well, I mean, there is, but just not maybe as much as we typically would be in the summer because of some of that air quality issues. Things have been good. I'm covered in mosquito bites. Okay, not covered, but that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I can go outside for a few minutes and be bit, like right away. And I swell. I am that person that gets a mosquito bite, like all the mosquitoes come and bite me, and then the bites swell, and so if any of them are closer in proximity to each other, they kind of fuse together, and it's just no good. So working in the garden, I always have to think, do I want to get bitten today or not? And it tends to be cooler in the early mornings and in the evenings, but that's also when the mosquitoes come out. And so sometimes if I just venture out in the middle of the day where it's super hot, it isn't as comfortable, but then I don't have as high of chances of being bit. So anyway, it is mosquito season. As far as a garden update, I have lots of flowers blooming right now. It is hydrangea season. I think the pink hydrangea that we have, or the one that color changes, doesn't bloom until later in the summer, but our white ones, I will show you right here. These are the Annabelles. They bloom white and end up tinging a little bit of this like light green as the weeks go on. So these are in the early blooming stages, so they are still this creamy white. And it is also lily season, and so we have all these different lilies. I don't remember how many varieties we have, but I will have shown you some footage in the beginning of this episode. So we have some of these orange ones. Some of them aren't great for cutting. The peach lilies have a bunch of blooms kind of going up it. I can't remember what that's called, but I would have to cut at the very base of the stalk, and then it would be like this 2 to 3 foot tall flower that, anyway, I'm just leaving those outside. And we have these yellow yarrow, which add a beautiful pop of color. And then these tall ones are, I can never get the order right. It's either blue crystal or crystal blue. I think it's crystal blue spires. They're part of the salvia family. And so they've got this beautiful bluish purple color to them with tiny little flowers. And yeah, they just make a really fun bouquet of different heights and shapes. And they're just so beautiful. So that is our bouquet for today. So today I do have a few finished projects to share with you and a few works in progress to share with you. There have been several new cast-ons since I have been here last. I think it's been about 3 weeks. I actually wasn't sure if I was going to be able to squeeze in one more episode in June, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just push it to July. And then in July I was looking at the calendar, and it seemed like maybe I wouldn't be able to get to it until middle or end of July. And then I thought, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna get this one squeezed in. I figured that if July happens, it happens. If it doesn't, that's okay. But yeah, I thought today would be my best chance to just get one more episode squeezed in there, and we'll see how it goes. I feel like even though it's only been a few weeks, I already feel a little out of practice and that I'm all over the place. But something to note, if you are new here, the way I organize my videos is I start with a little vlog, and it's mostly garden footage. A lot of times it'll be things that I'm baking and cooking or whatever, things like that. And then we go into an intro where I usually talk about the weather because I like to talk about the weather. And the garden update usually happens when there's stuff growing. So 6 months out of the year, there's no garden update. Maybe more than 6 months out of the year. Anyway. And then I go into my finished projects and then works in progress. And then usually there's an eats and reads section where I talk about maybe what I've been reading and things I've been cooking, any new recipes. And then sometimes there's a section at the end called Food for Thought. And it's sometimes related to making, sometimes not. I feel like everything is kind of related to making because it's just part of my life. So making things is just part of my life, and so it's all interrelated. But sometimes I'll talk about stuff that's been on my mind in that little section, and then sometimes, you know, people want to join in on that and share their thoughts. And the one thing I will say is that we are not here to tell each other what to do, how to think, what to think. We can share our thoughts based on what we think, but not to project them on other people to say this is how you should think, or this is how you should make, or whatever. I just want to throw that out there because there is a fine line and there is a distinction between having a conversation and telling people what to do. Links to things that I talk about will be in the description box below this video. I do use Ravelry for my project pages, and so there will be a separate part for that. And I try to discuss most details, if not more, here on YouTube. So for those who can't access Ravelry or don't use Ravelry, then you don't have to. The information is all right here. But for those that can access Ravelry and prefer some of the written down notes, usually there are notes there as well. And then I do provide closed captioning on all of my videos. You click on the CC button. YouTube also allows you to speed up or slow down videos, so if I speak too fast or too slow for your preferences, you can adjust that. Did I mention that links are in the description box below this video? I don't remember if I did, but there are links in the description box to the makers, things that I talk about. I try to go to the maker's website, that way you can just click around for their patterns or whatever, and it just means I don't have to list like all their social media links, all of their whatever links, because you can click on their website and find all of that information there. I think that is it. I think that's all I wanted to talk about in this intro section. So let's get to the finished projects. The first finished project I would like to share with you today is the one that I am wearing. This is the Willa by Annie Haas of This Bird Knits. It is my first pattern that I have made from this designer, and she had a summer solstice pattern sale for various tees, and I had heard several of my knitting friends knit this one and really like it, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll give it a try. The gauge is at a gauge that I just am really loving this summer at 18 stitches for 4 inches. I also feel like when you have these bigger, looser gauges, there's just more room to play with making, you know, a tighter gauge or using different weights of yarn to change up how airy the fabric is. This pattern is specifically written for fingering weight yarn. It was published in July 2020, and I just really like how the lace yoke sits higher up and that there's minimal lace for someone who is not a lace knitter. I just find it a little bit too fussy for my brain, and I just like something simple. So this is simple, and it is high enough where I don't feel like I have to wear a tank top underneath, because for me, a summer garment, I want to be able to wear with one layer. I don't want to have to layer it on top of something in order to feel comfortable wearing it if there are like big lacy holes. And I want it to be in a yarn that I find breathable, that is not going to be prickly. I don't feel like my skin is super sensitive, but if it's like 80+ degrees, I'm not going to wear wool. There are a lot of people that say wool is so breathable and helps regulate body temperature. Honestly, I can't do it. It's just prickly, and to each their own. If it works for you, great. It doesn't work for me. When it's humid and hot, I just don't like to feel prickly or, yeah, doesn't work for me. Usually in the summer I wear linen and cotton and things that have more positive ease because I like it to be airy and breezy, and that's my preference. So I was drawn to this pattern. I, again, like this lace yoke. It is knit top down, circular yoke construction, and the pattern is written for short sleeves, shorter than mine. Theirs is like pretty much at the body sleeve separation, and theirs is shorter in body length. So there are two adjustments that I made. I made this longer, the sleeve longer, and I made the body length several inches longer. And I made a couple other little modifications as well, and this is based on what my preferences are and my body and how I like things to fit on my body. There are, let me pull up the sizing information, 7 sizes in this pattern. The smallest size is 45.3 inch body circumference, and the largest size is 71.1 inch body circumference. So there is some wiggle room in there, and the suggested ease, I want to say, is like 5 to 15 inches of positive ease. So I knit the size 1, which would give me about 13 inches of positive ease. Looking at the schematic in the pattern, and I believe it's listed. Oh good, it's listed. I like it when patterns list their, or show their schematic or list their measurements for all parts of the sweater, because it helps me decide, is this sweater going to work for me, and do I think I can make modifications if I don't want it exactly like those measurements. So in the Ravelry project page, like that main screen before you purchase the pattern, it does give you information on neck circumference, body circumference, height to the underarm, sleeve circumference, and yoke depth. And I feel like those are major pieces of information that I need to figure out what's going to work best for me. That's also important because if I'm trying to figure out how much yarn I need and I'm going to be lengthening it, then I need more yarn than what is written as the pattern recommendation. So right off the bat, I knew that I wanted my sleeve circumference slightly bigger because I do not like negative ease in my sleeve circumference. And so I knew I was going to be adjusting that. And because the body circumference was 13 inches of positive ease, I knew that I could adjust that down and just move some of the body stitches to the sleeve stitches and go from there. So that made it easy to see. I think those were like the main things I changed. I have not measured my gauge again after blocking, but I knew from knitting my ranunculus that I showed in the previous episode that my row gauge or round gauge was going to be 1 stitch different. So the pattern has it at 18 stitches by 23 rounds for 4 inches of stockinette in the round, and I knew that mine was going to be 18 stitches by 24 rounds in 4 inches stockinette in the round, which actually worked in my favor because I knew that my yoke depth, I didn't want it as deep as the pattern, but then knowing that it was going to end earlier meant that it's also going to push my sleeve circumference higher, where my upper arm is going to be slightly bigger than if it had ended lower. And so knowing that I was going to move some of my body stitches over to the sleeve stitches would give me some more wiggle room to then make my sleeve have 0 ease instead of negative ease. And honestly, I probably could have moved even more stitches over. I think I did 2 stitches from the front and 2 stitches from the back, which would have taken a total of 8 stitches out of the body and added 4 stitches to each sleeve circumference. And I think next time, because I do plan on making this again, I will maybe move 6 or even 8 stitches total from the body, not total, sorry, per side to the sleeves to make it even bigger, because I think when I knit another one, I'm thinking about even like heavier weights, DK or worsted weight, which then if I want it as a layering piece, then I probably want my sleeve to be a little bit bigger. So we will see about that part once we get there. I went off on a little tangent there, but hopefully you could follow what I meant by moving stitches around to adjust circumference. So then I think I ended up with 10 inches of positive ease. I can't remember. I was doing some of the math, but for some reason some of it wasn't making sense to me how I calculated it, so I think I numbered something somewhere, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. I have plenty of ease where I want it and no ease here on the sleeve, and it's super drapey and comfortable and not see-through of a fabric. I used Santalina. I don't have a tag here. So it is a yarn by Pearl Soho. It comes in 328 yards for 100 grams. It's labeled as fingering weight. The yarn color I used was a sample color. Pearl Soho had a sale recently this summer for a bunch of samples, and so I was able to buy it at $10 for 100 grams, which was awesome, and I used 190 grams. So 2 Hanks got me this sweater, which was awesome. It is 70% organically grown cotton, 20% rayon bamboo or rayon from bamboo, and 10% hemp. And it is drapey, it was easy to knit with. I did not find it tiring on my hands. To each their own. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. It worked just fine for me. And yeah, I love it. The needles, it calls for a US 7 and US 8. I did the ribbing in US 6, and then I kept with the US 8 and got gauge for that, except for the row gauge, which I was a stitch off, but I explained that already. What else did I change? Oh, I did 1 extra set of short rows, again because my row gauge was different, so I still wanted to make sure I had plenty of fabric created in the back to raise the neck, which helps it sit nice and lower in the front instead of having it, up on your neck. And what else? I think that's all I have to say about that. I don't think I adjusted much else. I think I mentioned all the modifications I had for it. So I'm going to back up just a little bit so maybe you can see it better. I have it paired here today with black shorts, and my belly button is here, and so you can see that it goes several inches past my belly button. If I wanted to tuck it in the front, I can. And it is just a very, very comfortable length. The back sits nice and flat. It is a little billowy just from all of the extra positive ease there is in it. When I do raise my arm, it does go up a bit because of the yoke being slightly deeper. However, because I added, I think, like 3 or 4 inches of extra body length to it, when I raise my arm, it doesn't go like halfway up my torso. So yeah, I think that is everything that I have to say about this. I do plan on making another one, maybe several. It was a very enjoyable pattern to follow and a very enjoyable finished project to wear. Before I move on to the next finished project that I would like to share with you today, I wanted to share with you some earrings that I bought recently. I am so excited about them. So, I had been eyeing the Birdie Parker earrings. There are so many different ones. They are made by Christy Jensen, and there's just something so like modern and simple and yet statement piece about Christy's work. And I'm gonna get up close here. So these are sterling silver, so they don't bother my ears, which have only gotten more sensitive over time. And these are like sterling silver for the lever back, which also means they don't just like randomly come out, or, I mean, my earrings don't usually randomly come out, but I'm always worried about them pulling out. So they have these lever back, and then there's these circles, and then in the center there's a copper circle with stockinette knit stitches on them. Oh, I just love them. And I feel like with earrings, I am very conscious of, having dark hair and wanting the earrings to be able to still, have their moment. And I just love these. The next finished project I'd like to share with you is actually one that I'm not going to talk much about, but I did want to share it with you because I had finished it. It is the Slightly Sassy V, and it is a test knit that I'm doing for Amy Scher. This pattern is coming out early July, but since I'm not sure I'll be able to get back on here, well, I know I won't be able to, it'll be later in July if I get a chance to get on here. I did want to share it with you. I will share photos of it worn on my Instagram, which is edible.thought.makes on the pattern release day, so you can keep an eye out there. And I have shared them on my Ravelry project page. So here it is. Oh, I love it. I've worn it out already. Mine is knit in Pearl Soho's Linen Quill, which is a fingering weight base. and I used the colorway Lychee Pink. And this is a fingering weight sweater at 24 stitches for 4 inches, and it is so beautiful. It is top down raglan, and the increases are not, what's the word I'm looking for? Are not just like every other. You know, a lot of times raglans are increase round and then knit even, increase round, knit even. The increases are designed so that you wouldn't have a ton of extra fabric in the underarm, and that it more follows a body shape, and it is so lovely. I kind of want to knit a black one. Okay, in concept, I would love to knit a black one, but in actuality, I don't think I want to knit with black yarn because my eyes aren't the best, and I feel like it would just not go very well. But in my previous life, I would be wearing a lot more concert black. If you are a musician, you know what concert black, concert attire means. It means that when you have a performance, when you have, sometimes I guess an audition, I don't know, you would wear all black. Like, all black. Socks have to be black, shoes are black, all black. And I just feel like it'd be so nice to have this V-neck in black. Like one in wool and maybe one in like silk or cotton. It would just be really cool, right? But I don't really want to knit with black, but the idea of it sounds great. I wore this one with like charcoal gray slacks the other day when I was playing violin. And yeah, it was just really nice to have on. It was a cooler morning, but I feel like a black one would be so cool, right? Oh, it's so drapey, it is so comfy, and it's just like a nice classic staple. It does not have enough ease in the arms, I feel, for it to be a layering piece. So if I was to layer, it would just be over like a tank top or something. Like if I wore a tank top out all day and I wanted to be able to throw this on when it got cooler in the evening, if I had like a t-shirt on, I don't think it would work very well. It'd just be too bunchy, and the yoke is not super deep, which doesn't create a lot of room in the underarm. So as a piece that I would just wear on its own, perfect, but maybe not so much as like a layering piece over button-ups or over t-shirts or whatever. And that's just fine. I'm just, you know, making an observation on what kind of garment this fits into the category of maybe in my wardrobe. That was a really drawn out long sentence to just say that this is a great piece to wear on its own. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but hopefully you know what I'm trying to say here. I just love it. I think it's a great staple piece and it fits me really well. I did make a couple of modifications to it. So I did extend the sleeves a little. I did extend the body length a little bit. I did bring up the neckline a little bit when I did the edging. And that's really all I changed. So there you go. I told you what I changed. I will hopefully be on here in July and then I will wear this and so you can see it on a body. But otherwise, look out for Amy's newsletter if you haven't signed up already. They will share all of the information there as far as where to buy the pattern and the release date and all of that information. The third finished project I'd like to share with you today are a pair of socks. This is an ongoing monthly yarn subscription that I am participating in. It is by Candace of the Farmer's Daughter Fibers, and it is called The Sock Squad. This is my third year participating, and this year the theme is wildflowers and their pollinators, which is right up my alley. We were given a calendar of the illustrations of what is to come, so that is super fun. I love that. And I'm going to show you June's. So here is June. It is the Sacred Datura? Datura? No, I can't think of how to say that. And the Elephant Hawk Moth. So the colorway this month was based on this moth, so the pollinator. And honestly, like I mentioned last month, it surprised me. I was not expecting this colorway, and I had fun knitting it up. Here we are. I knit up socks for my husband, and these are going into the gift box for Christmas. I did have him try them on just to make sure they fit, and I told him to forget about them for the next 6 months. He's used to that. I do it all the time to him. But I held the yarn double. You know what, let me put this calendar away and then I have space to not knock everything over. So I started with like basic stitch counts from Summer Lee's Thanksgiving sock pattern, which is a DK worsted sock pattern where you hold yarns double. So I used that as reference to get some stitch counts, but then I kind of just veered off and did whatever. So I think the pattern has you use US 4 or 3.5 millimeters. I started using a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter to get a denser fabric, but then I feel like I at some point decided it was too dense and I didn't like it, so I switched to US 4. So I think my cuff is in a US 3 and then I switched to a US 4 after that. The base here is the Highwood sock base, which is an 80/20 superwash merino nylon, 400 yards for 100 grams, which in my opinion knits up closer to a worsted weight than a DK weight. And the mini is this dark brown, and then the main color is this lemony, limey, chartreusey tennis ball green with dark pink speckles. And compared to other people's yarn, I feel like mine has more subtle speckling. There were some people's yarns that seem to knit up with a lot of speckling, and I think there's just variation in hand-dyed yarn. And I feel like by holding the yarn double, I just kind of spread that out a little bit more, like some of the speckling, and it just looks, I think it looks really even. And between the two socks, it looks pretty even too. And then I decided to add in some stripes. So with the stripes, I just held the contrast color and the main color together. And then I did the same for the heel. And I did follow the heel instructions in the pattern, I think. It's like a stockinette heel flap. And the toe, I marled one of them, and then I ran out of yarn. So for the second one, I just held a contrast color double. And it's very satisfying to use up all the yarn. I used 105 grams of the main color, which is what it came in. And then for the contrast color, I used about 18 grams. So awesome. I had like 3-ish grams left. So these worked out really well and they fit well. I think I did have to make one kind of odd change, not odd, but something I hadn't planned on. I cast on a certain number because I thought maybe I would do one of the sets of patterns in her Thanksgiving sock pattern set. I think there are a few different patterns in there. And then I was following the adult large, but then because I decided that I didn't want to do ribbing the whole time, that I was going to change to stockinette, that was a different stitch count. So then I think did I have to go down? I might have had to do some decreases. I don't really remember now, but I might have had to do, I think I had to do some decreasing, and then also because I changed my needle size to a bigger size, I needed to adjust for that. So on here you can't really tell that there's a difference, and since it's been blocked it's a little harder to see, but the top part is slightly bigger, which actually works out fine because on a leg the ankles oftentimes are narrower than higher up in the leg. So then this part has a little more room, a little more give, and then it narrows in a little bit right before the heel, and then I keep that same stitch count for the rest of the foot after I do the gusset decreases. So I'm really happy with how these turned out. They're a really nice cushy fabric, and I think they will be well received. I am working on this long-term project of knitting socks for my husband. I do not have a deadline. I do not have a certain number that I'm getting to. I believe these are the 12th pair I have for him. Maybe 11th. I don't really remember. Because there was one pair that ended up over time getting too small, so then I took them. And then now he's worried I'm going to take all his socks. But I told him that there were some that I might have knit a little too short that I can fix, but he's like, no, you're just going to take my socks. So now I know that I should just knit them slightly longer than I think I need to, because over time sometimes they shrink a little bit. I do wash all our socks in the washing machine because I'm washing like 50 pairs of socks at once between the 4 of us. And I put it on cold, and I have a wool cycle on there, but I don't usually put them in the dryer. I never put them in the dryer. I hang them up on a drying rack, and over time they're still going to shrink a little bit. and that's totally fine, but then I just know I need to knit them slightly longer than I think, and it'll work out. So I'm talking like half an inch at most, maybe quarter inch, half an inch, but there's enough give in these that I think it's fine. But yes, he tried these on, and the heel part goes slightly, like ever so slightly higher, which I think should be perfect. On to the works in progress. I have 3 I would like to share with you today. The 4th one I'm not going to share just because it's a long-term project. It's the half and half triangles wrap that I call Love Letters. There should have been a little bit of footage of me knitting on it in the beginning of this episode. I'm not going to share it every time because there's parts of it that will just look pretty much the same. And then I don't want to have to talk through all the details again every single time. Today I have 3 works in progress to share with you. The first one, we're just going to keep going with my husband's socks here. I try to knit him or aim for like 2 to 3 pairs a year. What's great is that, unlike the children, his feet aren't really changing in size, and so what I have knit for him will just stay in his sock drawer for years to come, which is wonderful. I really love self-striping yarn for socks. I just find it so fun and satisfying to knit one more stripe. Even if I know what color is coming up next, it's still fun to do. And one of my favorite yarn dyers is Michelle of Woolens and Nosh. I had the pleasure of meeting Michelle and hugging her in person for the first time ever. I think it was last weekend. It's the Zombie Knitpocalypse. I think I totally forgot to talk about the actual retreat earlier. I didn't go to the retreat. I just went to this little window where there was a public marketplace, and I drove to for that. But it was so nice to meet a bunch of amazing people and talk to people that I've only spoken to on Instagram and through messaging and things like that, so that was super cool. And to all the people that came up and said hello and introduced yourselves because you have been a fan of my episodes and my blabbering here, thank you so much. I have to say that I was a little surprised. I don't know, I just felt like, I don't know, I wasn't expecting that, and it was just so nice and kind of people to come up and say, and just tell me how much they appreciate the stuff I put out there, because I hope that I put out useful information. I hope I have put out inspirational, positive vibes out there into the world, into this internet space, and to get that direct feedback felt really good. And even though I felt super awkward in the moment, I cannot even express in words that make sense how appreciative I am to have people that I've never actually talked to in person come up and tell me that they found meaning in the stuff that I share. Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. It was really meaningful, so thank you so much. Now, this yarn that I am currently knitting on is not yarn that I bought at the event. This is yarn that I've had for a little bit, but I had designated for my husband. The colorway is called Into the Mystic. Here is the label. It is a 90% superwash Targhee, 10% nylon 4-ply, and this one is at 308 yards for 100 grams, which I feel like the other ones are closer to 411. I don't really know why, but it might have just been a special hank. I don't know. It is a very round yarn. I love using this yarn because it washes so well over time. We've had 0 issues with fading, with color bleeding, really with anything. It is so comfortable to wear as well, and really nice and round and bouncy. And here are my cakes wound up. I like to knit my socks 2 at a time on their own needles. Sometimes it's magic loop, and sometimes it's 9-inch circulars. Oftentimes if there's a patterning on it, I like to use magic loop, just because purling sometimes with 9-inch circular isn't the most comfortable. But if it's just a vanilla sock, like Stockinette Round and Round, I love them on 9-inch circulars. I like to use the ChiaoGoo ones. Again, to each their own. I feel like sometimes people say, oh, everybody's talking about these short circulars, so they try them and they're like, these are awful. Well, guess what? they might not work for you, and that's totally fine. Isn't it amazing that there are so many tools out there available for everybody? I think one of the major things is how you hold your needles. So some people like to have an anchor, like they might use their pinky as like an anchor. With short circulars, you don't really have that room to anchor your pinkies. I don't knit like that, so it doesn't bother me. I also feel like but I also feel like depending on how tight you grip your needles, that can affect your tension, like literally your tension in your hands, not just talking about tension of knitting, like the fabric, and that could be uncomfortable. I don't find myself holding my needles super tight, and so I feel like that makes a difference. My gauge isn't particularly tight or loose. I feel like it's kind of somewhere in between, but just the way I knit, I don't know, it's just fine. So here are the start of these socks for my husband. Oh, they're so cute. Here are 2 cuffs done. One is slightly more into the leg than the other. I have a video here on YouTube how I like to prepare self-striping yarn for knitting socks, and I will link to that either here on the screen or in the description box below this video. This cream color on top is not part of the self-striping yarn. It is Patons Kroy in the, I think, muslin colorway. I really like this sock yarn. It leans sport weight, even though it says it's fingering weight. And it can be found at like Michael's or Joann's. And I find it super hard wearing, and I like to use it for areas on socks that are higher friction, so maybe like toes and heels. And there's just never been an issue with holes or just like it wearing thin or anything like that. I just feel like it holds up really well. I think it's 75% wool, 25% nylon, and it's like a woolier wool. I don't love the description rustic because I don't feel like it actually describes much other than people usually use the word rustic to mean like a nice way of saying itchy. At least that's what I've observed. I've never worn like Patons as like a sweater, so I couldn't tell you if it's like itchy, but on my feet, I feel like it's great. So anyway, since both of these yarns are sport weight, they work really well together, and I will be using that for heels, and then also just to save some yardage, I will be using it probably for toes, saving yardage on the main color. Because it's at 308 yards for 100 grams, I'm not really quite sure how far it will go for me. So what I'm going to do is I usually will knit like an inch and weigh the yarn before and after, and that will give me a good idea of how much yarn I need to leave for the foot since I'm knitting top down, and then I know how long of a leg I can knit in the main color. So that's where I'm going with these, and I did a 2x2, which is knit to a purl to cuff. Oh, I'm not following a specific pattern, by the way. And let's see. Here we go. I'm using US 2 or 2.75 millimeter needles, and I think my gauge is coming out at 7 stitches per inch. So I cast on 64 stitches, and I always do an Old Norwegian cast on. I find it to be really stretchy on top, but not flaring. Old Norwegian cast on is also known as German twisted cast on. I learned it as Old Norwegian cast on, so that's what I call it. But I feel like I've heard German twisted cast on more often, but I'm pretty sure they're the same thing. And let's see, I just knit until one of the colors stripes finished. And I think this is about 20 rounds total, including this top part in the cream. And then I will just knit the leg again as long as I need to make sure that I have enough for the foot, and that will come as I get farther in, and so I can measure out 1 inch and figure out how much yarn is used in 1 inch. And that will just be an ongoing project that I have on the go, and I have it in this beautiful floral patchwork project bag that I sewed up, I don't know, at some point, not this year, but I just adore it. And for those new here, I don't follow a pattern, I don't follow a tutorial, my bags are not for sale, I will not be making a pattern or tutorial. There are tons of them on the internet, and if you need more in-person help, I would recommend going to a local sewing shop or fabric shop. Oftentimes they are just excited to help a new sewer out or point you in the right direction. I've been sewing since I was a little kid. My mom sews, my grandma sews, and it's just in my blood. And my mother-in-law sews. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who enjoy sewing, and maybe not surrounded by, like physically surrounded by, but supported by a lot of people who sew, and it's just always been part of my life. So pun intended there. Actually, it was not intended. It just kind of happened. A lot of the bags I use are ones that I've made for myself, and the sizing is all over the place because I just do whatever the fabric tells me. The next work in progress I would like to share with you is in a newly finished bag, so I guess the bag is part of the finished projects. I had shared this on my Instagram, and it is so cute. I just love it. Are you ready? Dun 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 dun! Oh my goodness, it is adorable. The colors are so vibrant. It just yells summer. And I had bought this Pokemon fabric, I think end of May or sometime in May. And I bought it from Joann Fabrics, and I bought just enough, I think 12 inches. And it's by usually 44 inches, I think, so 12 by 44 inches. And I was making book sleeves for our girls to celebrate the beginning of summer reading, which is super fun. And so I made these book sleeves, and the outer fabric is the Pokemon fabric, and the inside fabric I think was some like teal and white chevron that I had scrap fabric for. So I made those, and then I had just enough left that I was going to make myself something. And I pulled together some other scrap fabric that I had, pulled out of colors that I thought would go really well with the main fabric. And again, I didn't follow a pattern. I just did whatever the fabric told me to do, and I came up with this, and I think it's adorable. And something fun is if you don't make the drawstring channels all the way to the edge, you can, when it cinches up, it kind of has these little wings on the side, and I think it looks really cute. And these are what I open it with. Isn't that fun? I just think it's so cute. Anyway, the inside has like a white kind of crosshatchy fabric on it. I like to peruse through the remnant bins at fabric stores because they always have some of these leftover that might otherwise get tossed, and I can use them. So they're usually, what, 75% off and less than a yard. Some of them go right up to a yard, which is actually a lot of fabric, but I like to look for anything that could be a lining in there. And I don't often buy like accent fabric from there because I don't feel like I usually need that much. But anyway, then I have a little more control over how much I have so that I don't have a lot of extra if I don't need it. This yarn is by another one of my favorite dyers, Ashley of Nomadic Yarns. Here is the label. I've had this yarn for a little while. I feel like since 2020 maybe, which the time period from 2020 to now has been very strange. This is the colorway Candy Shop. It is in her twisty sock base, which is 400 yards for 100 grams. It's another 80-20 superwash merino nylon, and this colorway is so fun. I'm going to show you the cakes here without getting tangled. It is very vibrant, it is super bright, and I'm going to knit 2 pairs of socks with this yarn for my 2 kids. I'm going to show you the start of them. I have the cuffs done. Here we go. Oh my goodness, so cute. Not following a pattern here. I did a knit 2 purl 2 ribbing. I think it's about 24 rounds. I kind of just went through however many stripes I felt like stopping at, and then I just started the stockinette portion. These are on US 1 or 2.25 millimeter ChiaoGoo 9-inch circulars, and usually my gauge with this weight of yarn at 400 yards for 100 grams is at 8 stitches for 1 inch. So I cast on 56 stitches, and these ones will go to our 10-year-old, and I'll probably cast on 56 stitches also for our 7-year-old. And I'm planning on doing like ribbing and then stockinette, and then I'll pull in a contrast color, I think, for the heels and the toes. That way I have enough of the main color to knit both of them socks. That is the plan. The contrast color, I haven't fully decided on yet. I feel like a cream could look nice just to offset all the bright colors. But at the same time, I could pull like another bright color in and that could be fun. I don't know yet. We will see when I get to that point. The last work in progress I have to share it with you today is a sweater. After all these sweaters, I think I might take a little break from sweaters. I don't know. They're a lot bigger to carry around. They take a little more thinking. And now that we're like in the heat of summer with some days that are going to be like up in the 90s, I don't think I really want like a sweater in my lap. So I feel like socks, shawls, hats, all of those are much smaller, much more portable, much less hot. So I think maybe that's like where I'm going to veer into July and August, but we shall see. This one is my 4th rendition of the coloring book raglan pattern by Amy Sher. I tested this pattern at some point, maybe a year and a half ago. I don't remember. Again, time has been kind of strange. And I've made several of them. And this one, I had this idea in my head. So I was thinking, back up. The pattern is written for worsted weight. And there's different views, so you can mix and match how you want it to be. And there's like stripes in one of the views along the bottom like torso area, and then the stripes in the sleeves. This one I'm omitting the stripes in the sleeves. I'm doing the stripes in the torso, but I wanted it a little different. So instead of changing up color, I thought, what if I changed up the texture? So the yarns I'm using are here on the screen. One is this like crinkly cotton. It's 100% Pima cotton. And the other one is 75% cotton, 25% yak. The top one is called the Serif base, and it's by Pearl Soho. And the bottom one is called Morning, and that base is also by Pearl Soho. I think this bottom one is called Cucumber something. Let's see. Should have a tag here. Cucumber Ice is the bottom one. And that's at 100 and... Am I holding it upside down? Sorry. And that's at 191 yards for 100 grams. And then the top one, is there a tag in here? The top one is, how many yards? Here we go. Top one, this one is 164 yards for 100 grams. So it is 100% Pima cotton, but it has this like crinkle to it. I couldn't explain to you why, but it's the way it's plied, I guess. There's this one like thread on it that crinklifies it. Anyway, it's super cool. So the idea I was thinking is like, let's change up the bands. The coloring is slightly, ever slightly different, but the texture is different. And so the Morning base is super round and has great stitch definition. And the other one, the crinkly one, does not have great stitch definition, but has a super cool texture. And so, are you ready to see it? Okay, let's try not to have the body too bunched up so it's a little more obvious. Here we go! Isn't that just cool? I am so excited about this. So when it blocks out, this Morning part, the main base one, should smooth out really nicely while the stripe should stay crinkly. I just love it. It kind of has an idea of like putting a semi like translucent washi tape over something, right? It's like just enough of this subtle interest that just makes it a little bit different, and I just love that. So I have the stitches on short cables and holders right now, and I will just knit that in this main color. I'm not going to stripe that. And then I did change up the number of rounds for this striping because I have 100 grams of this contrast color, and I wanted to use as much of it as possible. So I calculated how many grams I used for this one stripe. So I would like calculate it for 10 rounds and then calculate it for 12 rounds. And then I divided it to see how many stripes I could get out of it most evenly without having a lot of leftovers. And so that's how I decided on the number of rounds. And I just love how it's turning out. And I should have just maybe 2 to 3 grams of the contrast color remaining when I finish. Should. Or maybe I'd calculate it out to be 5 grams or less. Anyway, should be around 5 grams or less, I think, and I am really happy with how it's going to be. I have not quite decided for the sleeve length yet. I think I'm going to follow the view that has it 3/4 lengths, but of course I'm going to knit it longer than the pattern because I think the way it is in the pattern, it hits like close to my elbow crease area. And so I think I would just want to go to mid forearm, which for me is a more comfortable 3/4 length. And yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. And then have it be wider so that it can be a layering piece. I envision this for like spring or like early summer mornings and cooler evenings. But yeah, but like we were talking about layering pieces earlier or not layering pieces, this one has a deeper raglan increase section, so I feel like this one is good for layering, which means if I keep the sleeves a little wider and not taper them too much, then it can be easy to be thrown over like a t-shirt or whatever. This one does not have a deadline, but it's knitting up beautifully and really fun, and I am just excited to see like a vision come to life. It's just exciting to be like thinking about something and then think, what if? And then give it a try, and then it works, and so exciting. Okay, friends, that is it for the projects. I do have 2 more sections, the Eats and Reads and Food for Thought, but I'm thinking of just cutting those out today. I have a bunch of things I need to get done, and yeah, I don't have a ton I feel like to share on those other sections, at least not off the top of my mind. And so I feel like we're going to end it there. I hope you all are doing really well. I hope you are doing some fun things this summer or winter if you're in the southern hemisphere. And yeah. I can't think of anything. My brain is fried now. I'm looking at my to-do list and I need to get to that. And so yeah, that's where we're at. So with that, cheers to being creative. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.